Normally, when I make videos talking about the jobs report for each month, I always start the video out by saying, we have some good news and we have some bad news. And this month, there's a lot of bad news. I'm just gonna be real and honest with y'all. So let's go through the jobs report numbers that came out today for the month of July. So in July of 2026, it was revealed that the US economy cut 23,000 jobs. Interestingly, the unemployment rate ticked down to about 4.1%, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. There were also downward revisions for the jobs numbers in both May and June by a combined 103,000 jobs. Now, these numbers in declines for the month of July primarily come from public government employment, which lost about 53,000 jobs this month. But that could be honestly a statistical quirk. With summer school closings, those lost jobs are factored into the jobs report number. Now, as I've mentioned, there's this confusing notion in this month's jobs report where we on net lost jobs, but unemployment rate actually fell. And that might seem really confusing at first. However, you have to remember how the unemployment rate is calculated. Essentially, the unemployment rate is the number of unemployed people divided by the total labor force. Now, the number of unemployed people as reported in the U3, which is the specific measurement of unemployment that the media reports on in these jobs reports, because there's actually multiple different metrics of unemployment, that is determined by individuals who currently don't have a job, are available to work, and have actively looked for work in the last 4 weeks. And so the number of unemployed people can change if those people are no longer unemployed, right? They actually get a job, or they are no longer actively looking for work. And unfortunately, in this month's jobs report, the reason that the unemployment rate declined is that there are fewer people actively looking for work, right? So actually the share of individuals actively looking for work fell to 61.4% in July of 2026, which is the lowest it has been since February of 2021. The other reason why the unemployment rate could have fallen despite jobs being lost is the shrinking of the labor force, which fell by 250,000 people in July. And the primary reasons for this are two reasons. Number one, we have an aging US population, right, as the boomers age into retirement. And number two, we have declining levels of immigration due to some of the policies that have been enacted over the last year. My inclination for this is it's probably more to do with the aging US population, as the number of people in the labor force in their prime working years between 25 and 54 actually rebounded slightly compared to the June numbers from last month. One final metric I want to talk about from this jobs report that I don't think a lot of people focus on, and I think needs to be more focused on, are changes to the growth rate of weekly earnings, right? How much people are being paid for the jobs that they do. And what we found is that for the month of July, the year-over-year growth rate for average hourly earnings rose by about 3.2%. That's slower than last month's earnings growth rate, which topped at about 3.5%. As economists, there is a great concern, and I've talked about this several times, about the declining rates of purchasing power that a lot of people are experiencing. Because the issue isn't necessarily the fact that wages, right, are growing at a slower rate. The issue is more so the fact that inflation, right, is growing faster than wages can keep up with it. And that's why when you go to the store, you feel like you can't afford as much as you could several months ago. Now, a lot of this will be contextualized next week when we see the inflation reports, the CPI reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But as of right now, we are seeing average hourly weekly earnings grow slower than inflation is. And all of this, right, the weaker than expected jobs report numbers and the slower than expected average hourly weekly earnings combined with potentially high inflation means that the Federal Reserve, right, who has been keeping interest rates relatively steady over the last several weeks, might be forced to play their hand, so to speak, and increase interest rates against what this current administration is advocating for from the Federal Reserve. So there's a lot going on. I will keep you informed, especially with the inflation numbers coming out next week. But for now, that's all I got. As always, if you have any questions, let me know.